Hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Blair, or the Illuminati, and today I want to talk about the US education system. But before I do, I've got a few disclaimers I need to put out there. First of all, I want to recognize how absolutely privileged I am to have an education at all. There's countries in the world today that don't have schools, and there's thousands of children struggling to survive in poverty that don't know where their next meal is coming from, let alone what their school is teaching. I'm not trying to say that advanced math, science, and history should not be taught, just that there's other subjects that personally might be a little bit more important considering today's global economy. There's more that I'm going to touch on rather than just what's taught, even though I can't possibly cover everything in detail, but I just wanted to explain that and get that out of the way now. Some of this is going to be opinion, but I'm going to do my best just to present the facts to you with as little bias as possible as always. So with that being said, let's dive right in and get a clearer picture of what the United States education system is like and how it got so broken. Let's get into it. In recent years, we've seen more articles, more videos, and more discussion about what's being taught in school. YouTube videos like Don't Stay in School have gone viral, stating how ridiculous it is that we know the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, but we're clueless when it comes to taxes. How we know the different classifications of rocks, but basic first aid isn't mandatory. So many people can relate to this, and it sparks some worthy discussion about the education system. But before we get into reform and what's broken, let's see who built the education system to be this way in the first place. It turns out a man named Horace Mann is credited with creating the public education system. He was born in 1796 and in 1838 founded the Common School Journal. His 6 main principles were the following. The public should no longer remain ignorant. That such education should be paid for, controlled, and sustained by an interested public. That this education will be best provided in schools that embrace children from a variety of backgrounds. That this education must be non-sectarian, not affiliated with religious groups. That this education must be taught using the tenets of a free society, and that education should be provided by a well-trained professional teacher. And I can't say I really disagree with those principles. Horace was the father of the common school, a smart man, and he recognized the need for public education, and that's kind of incredible. So I don't want anyone walking away from this video blaming him or something. In the early 1800s, the problems and the education system were so incredibly different, and the needs were not the same as where we're at now in society. It's not as if they did taxes the same way we did today, or, didn't even have them way back when. The first aid wasn't what it is. The stock market, the process of purchasing a home, hell, the 30 basic human rights that the United Nations founded in 1948 didn't exist. So it's not as if a course on taxes, basic first aid, knowing your rights, and all that good stuff was going to be at the front of this man's mind. But then, what was it that Horace had in mind exactly? Well, jobs. More specifically, factory jobs. As William Tressiter at Mission.org wrote, the modern American school system was primarily designed to instill discipline, not to foster learning. Education was more about forming behavioral traits to enforce mental habits, not vice versa. Let that settle in for a moment. Education isn't really about learning. More specifically, it isn't about learning how to learn. It's about learning how to conform. Predictability is the ultimate goal. The logic went something like this. If you could compete, you would be hired for a job. If you were hired, your virtuous habits would eventually lead to your promotion. As promotions accumulate, your pay increases and eventually you reach financial comfort, or perhaps even significant wealth. Man wanted every man, and not sure about women, to be able to compete in the economy. The fragmented social options weren't able to keep up with the shift in useful skills. A more coordinated effort was required. If nothing happened, the United States would be rocked by social unrest as the classes drifted apart into haves and have-nots. To put it briefly, the education system is about habits, about everyone on equal footing back in the 19th century. It was about getting everyone to do their homework, accepting what they were assigned, completing projects, and caring about scores and ranks, sitting still, those lessons. During that era, it was necessary. It's worth reminding ourselves now about the key characteristics of the industrial era and how we can see them manifested in the education system that continues to operate across America to this day. Schools focus on respecting authority, punctuality, measurement, basic literacy, arithmetic. Notice how these reinforce each other. You enter the system one way and are crammed through an extended molding process. The result? A good enough cog to jam into an industrial machine. Dependable, interchangeable, replaceable. I won't pretend to understand the world of Horace Mann. I've never lived in it. This structure was better than nothing. It gave people an opportunity to work and basic knowledge. But why the fuck haven't we adapted now? Northwestern University economist says the early industrial capitalists spent a great deal of effort and time in the social conditioning of their labor force, especially in Sunday schools, which were designed to inculcate middle-class values and attitudes so as to make the workers more susceptible to the incentives that the factory needed. In a post-industrial world, education may require an equally bold rethink. It might mean more comprehensive adult education or regular retraining to keep skills sharp as old jobs disappear and new ones appear that require vastly different responsibilities. Or it may involve integrating technology to create more personalized learning experiences. We have jobs today that never existed back then, that citizens in the early 1900s could have never dreamed of, just as how I'm sure that in 100 years from now we'll have new jobs that I would have never dreamed of either. And we need to adapt with it. It's not that traditional subjects are dead. There's still students that go on to study science or English or math, but encompassing everything, every opportunity, and trying to set everyone on the same playing field again, it hardly sounds possible. When the job market was primarily factory worker, the education system instilled the qualities it valued in its future workers. But now, it's not just factory worker as a primary opportunity. There's jobs in video game design, ski instruction, decorating cakes, airplane engineers, YouTubers for God's sake, and countless more. The idea of teaching enough classes for every job is just about impossible, and I get that. A kid that wants to study math today is going to be introduced to it far sooner than a video game designer who would want to start learning the basics of their field, unless they were doing that in their free time. And hiring teachers in hundreds or thousands of completely separate subjects to teach, it's just not happening with how little teachers are already paid. When education reform is addressed by the government, it's still focused on test scores. No Child Left Behind, a law that held schools accountable for how children learn, was one of the more modern examples of an education reform that we've seen. But in my eyes, the problem isn't if the children know all their mathematical equations or Shakespeare plays, it's what the schools are teaching them in the first place. Although the Every Student Succeeds Act, which replaced No Child Left Behind in 2015 by Barack Obama, tried to correct problems that arose, it felt like no one wants to take on the task of tearing down what we've got and starting over. Hell, I get why. It sounds like hell just thinking about it, but what we have now is incredibly obsolete and it's not helping anybody. As the Foundation for Economic Education says, even though the curriculum of the public education system has developed, the essence has stayed the same. Children are still taught in a standardized and industrialized way. As with anything that comes from a centralized control, it is highly inefficient, bureaucratic, and wasteful. Children rarely are allowed to be children. Play is stifled. Children are crammed into a classroom and taught in a standardized way. Creativity is restricted. They aren't allowed to harness their inquisitive minds. Questioning things that is part of the analytic mind and a key to societal development, but this takes a backseat to examinations. The very nature of tests relies on memorization, repetition, and regurgitation. Tests infrequently harness the analytical mind. They train students to know answers, however, they don't train them on how to find the answers. Each child is unique in their own right. Each has a different personality and preferred way of learning. Under the current system, each child is bundled under one standardized umbrella. When considering the different types of learners, it is easy to see why some get left behind. Not only does this method of teaching paint everyone with the same brush and teach the same basic skills a factory worker would want, but it's stifling creativity. And there's a lot of creative jobs out there. Like, yeah, I'm on YouTube, but what about painters? What about the artists that help create my sprites, the editors that help me with my videos, songwriters, researchers, writers, fashion designers, animators, videographers, photographers, illustrators, actors, web designers, tattoo artists, and so on and so on. I'm not saying every school and every teacher suppresses this, but that the current system does not encourage this. The focus is your MCAs, SATs, tests, and grades. Meanwhile, one gigantic reason young people say they don't vote is because they aren't even sure how. When I was 18 and I first went to the polls, I was embarrassed, which, I admit, I didn't even know what some of the topics on the ballot were. I felt like I had done my own research, but when I got there, all my confidence just left and I was like, I don't know what they're even asking anymore. And I feel like that's something that I should have learned in school, because that's what you're supposed to do in school is learn, right? You learn about the government and how to survive and be successful in the world. And yet I walked into a voting booth and I didn't know what the hell I was doing entirely. These things alone tell us that the system isn't working. We don't need to know the skills to work a factory job anymore, in case that hasn't come across loud and clear now. What we need are the skills to learn, to expand our interests, and function in the new world. One article from Teachers College, Columbia University sums it up quite nicely, not just as to why this system doesn't work, but why nothing has been done for so long. Take our schools. Their problem has been misdiagnosed. The nation's school system did not suddenly decline. Imagine a golden age of schooling, perhaps in the 1950s. The highest test scores at that period would be inadequate for the present. The current economy and burgeoning new technologies make the prior performances of our students inadequate. High school dropouts, whose numbers were dramatically higher than now, could get jobs working in a factory or assembly line, making a salary sufficient to support a family. Those jobs do not exist anymore. They have been replaced by low-paying, higher-skilled jobs in the service sector. For high school graduates, entering skill levels required for jobs are also higher. The job facing our nation is not to fix broken schools, but to remake our educational system to meet the needs for a new society. Unfortunately, we are distracted by a diverse debate over whether children are less well-prepared academically than in the past. We are focused on how much we may have lost rather than how very much more we need to gain if our youngsters are going to succeed in the future. The nation has rightly recognized that education is troubled, particularly in urban and rural areas. Poll after poll shows better schools among the public's highest priorities. Any candidate running for office, from dog catcher to president, must have an educational platform. Unfortunately, politicians too often seek quick fixes, silver bullets, and newsworthy sound bites rather than comprehensive plans. The education system is as outdated as it is broken. If it doesn't work for us and hinders students from feeling encouraged, creative, and free to explore the world around them, make no mistake, it's broken. But thankfully, things are slowly starting to change. It's slow-going progress, but hey, as long as it's progress, that's something. That same article from Columbia University also states, alternatives to public education are being introduced around the country. Milwaukee, Cleveland, and Florida have created voucher programs allowing students to attend private, even for-profit schools rather than public schools. Homeschooling, which now enrolls between 500,000 and 2 million children, is permitted in all 50 states. And I understand homeschooling isn't possible for everyone. Plenty of families rely on two incomes, both parents working, or they don't have the resources or qualifications to do that. And it's the same reason a parent can't be expected to teach their child all these financial and technical things. They may not know the subject themselves. But at least, I'd imagine, as long as homeschooling was done properly, a student's teacher, aka their parent, would be able to help them on a more personal level, center lessons around the way their child learns, and be able to include comprehensive and modern applications. And contrary to the name, homeschooling takes place in an actual home only a fraction of the time. A great deal of instruction happens in community colleges, at libraries, or in the halls of local museums. These experiences have the effect of maturing kids much more quickly and cultivating a trait of open-mindedness, as a Harvard junior and former homeschooler Claire Dixon told Business Insider. Now, this isn't me advocating for homeschooling in particular, it's just alternatives, or at least an openness to them, especially when they've been proven effective. Research suggests that homeschooled children tend to do better on standardized tests, stick around longer in college, and do better once they're enrolled. A 2009 study showed that the proportion of homeschoolers who graduated from college was around 67%, while among high school students it was 59%. There's also Montessori schools, which are more hands-on lessons. It's a non-competitive environment where older students teach younger ones. So not only are students learning, but they're learning how to teach, and seriously, that's kind of cool. You learn how to explain something to someone that doesn't quite understand it, and it encourages empathy. America Magazine states, each activity is intended to be self-correcting and hands-on. They are very cleverly designed so that the child will discover step by step what she is supposed to learn. Each activity is a building block to the next. So when children learn to trace shapes inside metal inserts that have various geometric shapes, they're unwittingly practice the fine motor skills that will enable them to pick up writing, which they typically do much faster than the average child. Equally well conceived are the mathematics activities, which work with concrete materials like beads and demonstrate that anyone is able to become comfortable with math. Now, don't get me wrong, the idea of Montessori is pretty old. Maria Montessori developed it in 1897, but it's been adapted, and it's not about turning kids into factory workers. They're known for being individually placed, most importantly. Now, we already know why some parents can't turn to homeschooling, but if Montessori schooling has been around for some time, it's proven successful, and there's already schools that use this method, why hasn't everyone heard of it? Why isn't it everywhere? I mean, most articles I've found on the topic are overwhelmingly positive, saying this method is superior in almost every regard. Some argue it's because there isn't any real definitive proof that Montessori education is better than public school. There's too many variables in evaluating how a child grows, learns, what kind of job they get. I mean, it's far more than just school that impacts those things. So proving without a doubt it's better is one hell of a feat, and claims that Montessori is better would need to be validated in order to overhaul the system. There have been a number of studies done to try and determine if children can really benefit from Montessori though, even as young as preschool age. Research on preschool education can be hard to conduct and interpret because kids who go through different preschools may differ in various ways, such as by socioeconomic status, which in of itself affects academic achievement. To get around these differences, in a 2017 study, Dr. Lillard and her colleagues compared educational outcomes among 141 preschoolers who had been randomly chosen via lottery to attend either a Montessori preschool or a traditional preschool. The two groups weren't academically any different when they started school, but by the end of the 3-year study, the kids who had gone through Montessori preschools were more academically advanced and had better social skills than those who went to a traditional school. The Montessori students also reported enjoying school more. And again, I've got no idea if most, any, or all kids would benefit from this kind of learning, but it shows that traditional schooling is, at the very least, falling behind on the times. Even with alternatives, public school is still typically the easiest to access and most affordable option for millions of families. Vocational or VOTEC high schools offer some traditional courses as well as other programs like agricultural, business, computing, construction, creative, culinary, healthcare, human services, mechanical, and technical. Some fees might be affordable if you're in a county of a VOTEC high school, but at other times they can run upwards of $16,000. And don't even get me started on the cost of private schools. Even without Googling that shit, I've seen the costs go up and up to the price near expensive colleges. So where do we go from here? Should every parent put their child in Montessori, VOTEC, homeschool them, or eat ramen forever so that their child can go to private school? No, because education should be free and easily available. So I'm not going to say that an alternative is the permanent solution. A temporary one maybe, and if a parent believes that Montessori, VOTEC, private schooling, homeschooling, boarding school, whatever is best for their child, well, then that's their child, so who the hell am I to judge? Unless, of course, that school is abusive. But the only permanent solution we're going to see here is education reform on a massive scale. I'm not saying all at once, but it definitely needs to happen sooner rather than later. Some articles, such as one from The Atlantic entitled "America's Not-So-Broken System," seem to downplay this issue. They're far from the only news source that insists the root of the problem is not incompetent design, as it is so frequently alleged. Nor is it stasis, rather it is the twofold challenge of complexity and scale. And here's where I have to disagree. The problem is all of these things. The design may not be incompetent, but we're relying on a system that values specific traits sought in the 1800s. It was competent then, it's not anymore. While some things do change, such as training given to teachers and history books growing thicker with time, many things don't. Budget cuts are still rampant, teachers still protest, and in Oklahoma the budget cuts are so severe that in 2018, 30% of public school students went to a school with no art classes. So how is this encouraging creativity? How is this not stasis? Calling it hysteria or saying we shouldn't talk about building from scratch, sure. I'm not saying fire all the teachers, bulldoze the schools, unenroll everyone, and let's take the time to do a redo. I don't think anyone is, and I don't want you walking away with the impression that everything you've learned is useless. Even learning that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell isn't entirely useless. It's fascinating to learn how things work, and those lessons that introduce kids to science and sparks their interest, those are interesting things. We need biologists out there, Though I guess you could argue it also can turn some kids off to certain topics, being forced into them rather than feeling they have a choice. There's two sides to every coin here. But rather than ingrain different mathematical formulas into each kid's head, what if we taught them financial planning in a math class? What if in an English class we had lessons on how to make resumes and understand contracts for apartments or homes? Why can't history class explain the foundations of our political parties, how to vote, and our human rights? Again, I'm not saying no schools do this now, but mine sure as hell didn't, and I know without a doubt I'd be miles ahead if I did. The first step to make change is to be aware of a problem, and then talk about it, and then talk to our government, talk to our schools, and make it known that this is something we want. This is something our future children need. So, with all of that being said, that's where I'm going to end today's video. Let me know your thoughts, comments, opinions down below in the comment section. If you liked today's video, make sure to hit that like button, and if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you guys want more content from me, you can pop open that description box. You're going to find links to all of my social media, Discord server, second channel for my puppy Casper, Sad Milk collaboration channel, it goes on and on and on. All the cool stuff is in the description box. So again, guys, thank you so much for making it to today's video. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys!